All right, in three, two, one. All right, welcome back to the Educators Podcast. I'm your host, Alejandro Gutierrez, and we're gonna go way back, way back into time. And I was able to reconnect with this former classmate of mine, and I'm gonna let him introduce himself first, and then we'll get into it. Go ahead, my man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate the time. I think it's awesome what you're doing, by the way. So it's cool to reconnect. My name is Michael Chavez Booth. I go by MCB. Back when we were, knowing each other in school, I
Booth,
think I went by
Booth,
Booth.
yeah, Booth.
Booth, yeah, yeah. Times have changed. I use both last names now and go fully by Michael Chavez Booth. So MCB. I'm out here in Los Angeles. Hopefully, make my way back to Sacramento sometime soon, and I work in esports, and I know we're going to talk a lot about that. But I
Yeah.
work in esports, and my much of my career has been in professional slash traditional sports, and now I'm in this new world, man. It's exciting and continues to grow. So
That's tight, man.
yeah,
Yeah, man. I appreciate you taking this call, and I appreciate everyone who's out there listening to this on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere we are. By this point, we're past 4,800 downloads, so I'm pretty excited of how far this podcast has come. Trying to ball out on a budget. So we're getting there organically.
yeah. Speaking of ball out of budget, we got to get something there for your push board, man. I
Yeah.
almost sent you some swag ahead of time. I totally forgot, but
Okay.
maybe after we're done here,
Let's
I'll
go.
send you
Let's go.
some.
Yeah. Hey, that's what we're doing. I appreciate you. I'm leaving that blank until people send me stuff. But yeah, it's kind of like hey, hook me up. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
thank you. I'm glad you noticed that. It took 42 episodes for someone to notice that, and
yeah.
hopefully by the 43rd, I'll have something there. So
Exactly.
yeah, Mike, I appreciate your time. And like I said, we go back. We go back all the way back to high school. I was a freshman. I got thrown into this senior heavy class. It was AP Spanish with Senorita Ward. She's a legend. And I get in there, and I remember the first day she told me, she goes, "Hey, just so you know, and I still remember this. I still remember this to the day. She was like, "Hey, just so you know, there's a lot of higher classmen in here, or people from higher classes." And I kind of didn't understand what she meant. I thought she meant like social economic classes, right? I was like, "Dang, she
Oh
just called me
wow.
broke." I didn't understand. I was 13, 14 years old. I had no idea what she was talking about.
Yeah.
And I go in there and I'm like, "Why am I in here?" I go home and I'm like, "Dad, why would you throw me in this? Why would you have them put me in this class?" And you're like, "Oh, because Spanish 1 and 2 and 3 are going to be too easy for you," and they were.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was able to do AP Spanish young, very young, and I always brag about that with my students because now that I'm a Spanish teacher, I'm like, "Hey, man, I took this as a freshman," and they're like,
Full
"What?"
circle. Yeah,
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 full
yeah.
circle. Yeah, full circle. So, you were in there, and there was a lot of students in there, and yeah, I mean, you were very nice to a 14-year-old back then. You, as a senior, you were a popular dude with your Letterman jacket and everything, and playing football. So I looked up to you guys. You guys were really cool with me, man.
Thanks, man. I
Yeah,
think. I think. Thanks.
yeah.
I
No,
remember
it's cool.
you were also a big 14-year-old though. That was the other
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. I
Yeah, like
wasn't. Yeah, I didn't look tiny. No, yeah, 5'10", probably
so I was
5'9".
probably I was probably confusing you with like a junior, to be
Yeah,
honest. That's what it was.
yeah. No, and they helped me out a lot. So like,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
no, you're good. And I actually look back, I wasn't a small guy. It wasn't like I was like this little guy. I mean, I was a new student, but I did feel like, I don't know. It was just a weird experience. I'm never gonna forget that class because I was the only freshman with seniors, and it was definitely like it was tough for me to kind of like be mature enough to be in there, because like, whoa, I got to do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
So
Senora Ward was something else, man. I'll never forget her. Definitely. She was very unique. I have one anecdote with her. A good friend of mine, Laylee, we were both in that class. I don't know if you remember Laylee, but she
I think so.
she actually works at Sac State now.
Oh wow.
But we were so tight, and we made up this lie for Senior Award that I was staying at her house because all of our utilities were taken in like some bankruptcy court battle, and that like the repo man came and took everything. So like I didn't have a fridge, I didn't have a bed, I didn't have TV, nothing. And her face, she like immediately was just like, "Oh my goodness, is
Yeah.
that true?" And Laylee the whole time had to like kind of buy into it because I kind of drug her into this narrative. She was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, it's really sad." And then at the end of class, I was like, Singer Award, I'm just kidding. None of that's true. And actually, I understand the severity of this fib and how it could impact people. And I don't mean to offend you in that. And she was, after that, she never let it down, man. Every class, she would be like, "How's everything at home?" I'm like, "It's good. It's good. I'm
Yeah,
telling
this
you,
is a
it's good."
joke. Yeah. No, she was definitely marked my life as well because, just having a teacher with that much energy. Remember that? I mean, speaking about
Yeah.
her, I hope she's I don't know where she is. I hope she's doing well, but she definitely had this energy that I don't have when I teach. Like she's just, man, she was just doing it. She had these
Yeah.
songs and these little
Yeah.
dances, and I'll
Yeah.
never
The little
forget this.
pops, you like pop around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I just remember you and a bunch of people just cracking up, and I'm just sitting like, this is crazy, and I. Unfortunately, I can't teach that way. That's not my style. I don't have it.
Yeah.
I am upbeat. I'm in their face, but I'm not doing those songs. So shout out to her for leaving a mark on us. Leaving a mark on her students for
Yeah,
sure.
it obviously stuck with you. It stuck with me. So hey, it played a role in who we are and what we did, right? So
Yeah, heck yeah.
yeah.
So speaking of school, we just stay on that path. Like you said, I am a teacher. I'm a Spanish teacher, and I'm in the neighborhood where I grew up. So it's really cool to see like I go around the community, I just see people uh, and kids are like, hey, Mr. G. So and I want to be that teacher because my dad was that educator back in the day, and when he
Yeah.
was at Rio Tierra, and he was he was there, he was admin for a long time, and he was all over the place. For the defunct, it used to be Grant Union District, now it's Twin
Yeah.
Rivers,
Yeah.
but so we go places. I tell the story all the time. We go to Chuck E. Cheese, and all his like old students were there, and they would just give me a bunch of tokens because we just ran into them. So different things like that where I'm like, well, that's my dad, dude. You know what I mean? Like, so like,
Yeah.
I know my dad's not, a pro baseball player, but like, that's my dad, and these people are
Yeah.
they're gonna remember my dad forever. And I wanted to be that person at that moment. I was like, I got to be that person too, So
That's cool, man. That's
that's
really
what
cool.
took me there,
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. So kind of tell me, man. We already talked about teachers. We talked about how they left the mark on us. Anything else? Well, let's just talk about what you do after high school. Let's go for there first. What'd you do after high school, man?
Yeah, I went to undergrad at the University of San Diego. It was a private school in San Diego. Surprise, surprise. And while I was there, I studied business. I always thought that I was going to go get a law degree and become Jerry Maguire, which is a
Show me the money.
really old pop culture reference, but that was top of my mind back then. It was like one of the first looks into like what it took to be a sport agent and kind of what that life was about. And I was kind of, pretty enamored with that. But I ended up actually going to law school for a little bit, and I just did not like it at all. I just
Okay.
decided that was not my path. But in undergrad, speaking to a couple of teachers, they noted that I was a really good writer. And they said, have you ever thought about PR, public relations? And I said, I don't even know what that is. So no, I haven't, certainly. And they said, you should look at it. You're a good writer. You're a good storyteller. You have this energy. I feel like it would be good for you. And so I started toying around with some internships, at the sports information office at my undergrad, a couple of agencies and organizations nearby in San Diego. And eventually I landed like a year-long internship with this then San Diego Chargers. And so I was on with that club for a while. This is dating myself, but the year that they went to the AFC Championship and lost to Tom Brady and Foxborough, and that was the year that LaDainian Tomlinson had an injury,
He
and
didn't play, right?
Philip Rivers had an injury, but he played on his torn ACL,
right.
which is incredible even now. And I did that, and then after that, I kind of took a little bit of a hiatus from, in terms of establishing a career. And I did some odd jobs, and I actually did a little bit of PR, but more in like, private consultation. So working with small companies and like friends and family on trying to, get them out there and really promote them. And then eventually I found my way to Los Angeles because I recognized that was a big market for public relations and storytelling and marketing communications. And so I found an internship with a big time agency called Edelman, and quickly advanced there into a full-time job. And at the same time, I went back and got my master's. And I actually went to USC. They have a really good communications school there called Annenberg. And I got my master's there. So while I was working, I was going to get my master's and,
Yeah.
also, being a partner at home and like really growing up really, really fast. And I decided at that point, okay, I probably should stick this out and stay in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. And I've been there ever since. And fast forward, I want to say it's been, I guess, 7 years later from when I graduated from the master's program, I actually went back and taught. And I've taught several semesters now as an adjunct for public relations at USC. And that's been really rewarding too.
Dang.
So respect to you, respect to Miss Ward, obviously, in terms of what teaching is like. And it's a little different at the collegiate level, but there's still a lot of challenges and things you got to work through and learn, so.
Oh, you're not telling the kids to take their hat off and put their phone away?
The phone part is the hardest thing. The phone part is the hardest thing. The computer is the hardest thing. Now, I want them to take notes. I want them to be engaged, and I want them to be able to look stuff up because some of this stuff's interactive. However, when we have a guest speaker and they're telling them all about like their profession, and they're, you know, they're even opening the door for them to ask good questions, or why don't you come talk to me about what you want to do? You know, still on the computer. So I had a rule in my class: when we have guest speakers, no computers, no phones. When I'm up there and you want to, you know, if I'm wasting your time and you want to show me that, that's fine. But when we have guests, no, let's not do that. So
Okay, that's a little uphill battle I deal with all the time. But no, yeah, that's cool, man. It's a little. I guess it doesn't change, but it's very different. You know, technology has changed, right? You know, kids are on their phones, and we didn't have that issue, right? When we were in school, there was no such thing as putting our phone away. You know, because I can only imagine what we would be doing on the phones. It would be a mess. You know, so I don't blame the kids too much for that because it's there. You know, it's there, and it wasn't there for us. You know, yeah, man. So it's cool. What kind of, you know, we talk about college in the show a lot. I talk about, you know, making a decision to go to college and where to go, but how was that conversation at home? Was that something that you grew up knowing you were going to go? Was that something your parents, you know, kind of instilled in you because of their careers? I don't know. Can you kind of share a little bit about that?
Yeah, both my parents were fortunate enough to go to college, which says a lot for that generation. You know, my dad, his family's from Midwest. They're white background. My mom is from Tijuana, so she's Mexican. She was the first person in her family to go to college. She's actually one of the first people in her family to graduate from high school as well. She grew up in a migrant family, so education was important, but it wasn't the number one priority. You know, it was definitely working and taking care of the family. You know, some of these traditions, and so she herself actually entered education. She wanted to become a teacher early on. And one of the main reasons for that and that interest was when she was in grade school, she came over to the States. You know, they immigrated, and she came over and she couldn't speak English. And she had this one teacher who was really impactful to her because he, after class, before class, would take time to teach her and help. And she learned to speak English. She had ESL program, but she learned to speak English primarily from Peanuts, from Charlie Brown and Snoopy, because he would read the comics with her. And so she became a huge fan, obviously. But there was an instance when she was a kid when, you know, probably one of the first sessions she was in school, and they went around the class and asked, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up, whatever. And it came up to her, and she was, you know, so nervous because she was trying to think of the words, and she was reciting to herself, this is what I'm gonna say, this, I'm gonna say, this, I'm gonna say,
Right.
you know. And then she finally got her chance, and she said, I want to be a t-shirt. And then all the kids like just started clowning on her, and you know, even the teacher was like, you said a t-shirt? Oh, you mean a teacher? And so it became this big thing. And after school, she ran home and was just like really upset and crying to her mom. And her mom was like, look, if you want to be a camiseta, then you be the best damn camiseta that you can be. Like, because her mom didn't get it, right? Like, she didn't understand the t-shirt thing.
Right.
But anyway, so education was really important. My dad was also a teacher when he was young in his career. In fact, that's how he and my mom met. He was teaching some of her younger siblings when they were in middle school and high school, and so he somehow came in touch with her at an event or something like that. And then they obviously got married and had me. And so throughout my life, you know, education was pretty important and instilled in me. And so I don't think it was ever a real question about going to college. It was really more about, you know, how do we get there, and what college are we gonna get into. And at the same time, it was never super a situation of pressure. I never really felt like overwhelmed or, oh God, if I don't get into the school,
Right.
what then? It was more so, this is what's going to happen, and we want to encourage and help you, but this is ultimately your decision. So let's do this together, and we'll be behind you. And that was perfect. Like that, I couldn't have asked for a better support system in that regard. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah. No, I totally agree. I'm kind of in the same. I'm in the same boat. You know, both my parents were educators, so they went to they met at Sac State, and the whole love story. And I repeated that love story with my wife. We met at Sac State too, so it's kind of the same thing.
Wow.
But
That's cool.
yeah, you know, so you know, I talked about it before with other people, and I talk about it with even, you know, coworkers or whatever it may be, and we just kind of try to talk about that college situation, how that is at home, and how different it is. You know, we talked about that, the word privilege or normalizing, whatever people use, but
Yeah.
I just wanted to reach out to you, see what you thought about that, or what you dealt with, because at my house is the same thing. It was a kind of a thing of like, not if I'm gonna go, it was like, where are you gonna go? Where are you gonna go,
Yeah.
son? And because it was normal. I looked up in my house, and college was something that my parents were able to do, and they always said, hey, we did it, and we came from another country. We weren't born here. We came here, and
Yeah.
and so what is your excuse? That's what my mom and dad were like. What is your excuse,
Yeah.
man? And I'm like, oh shoot. So they didn't make it really easy for me in that regard.
Yeah.
Obviously going back to the beginning where my dad made me be in the AP classes as a freshman and pushing for that. I'm like, what are you doing, man? I'm just trying to.
Yeah.
So, and that's obviously him being an educator, him knowing he was a counselor as well. So he knew like the transcripts and how to do all that. And he knew what to do and who to talk to for that. So
Yeah.
it was, I definitely had that in my corner, which was a huge advantage, to have that at home.
Yeah.
And I hope
That's
I could be
awesome.
that for somebody in the classroom now, because a lot of these
Hmm.
kids don't have that you and I
Yeah.
had. And so it's like, I want to be that person at least, like, hey, like you said, spending that time and reaching out to that student and be like, hey, I know you need to learn English, so we're going to do it this way, whatever, finding that way to teach them to learn the
Yeah.
language, whatever it may be. We never know what kind of little conversation will affect these students the same way we talked about our Spanish teacher right now. It's like, oh man, she was cool, stuff like that. So those
And
are,
I think even outside of the classroom, it's important and to find, or I guess encourage, or I guess set up that opportunity for mentorship in any capacity. Like, it doesn't just have to be a teacher. It doesn't have to be about education, but some of that life mentorship. I'm actually volunteering now for a nonprofit out here, and we go and basically we just speak on a weekly basis and interact with these kids. A lot of them are continuation students. They're in specialized programs because
mhm.
for whatever reason they couldn't graduate through the normal the normal curriculum. And it's incredible how much just like showing up is important for them, and just doing that kind of thing, I think is equally valuable in some respect than saying, well, how are you going to get into college, or what are you going to do? It's really more like, okay, what are you interested in, and what,
Yeah,
what what kinds of things do you want to explore, and
yeah,
how can I help you figure that out, or what can we look at together, or what questions might you have. And because I say that because when we get feedback from the students at the end of each semester, what was your most, I guess, what was your most memorable experience from this? What did you pull from this? And also, what can we do better? And the answers are almost always synonymous. It's, you showed up, keep showing up. Like, that's it. They just love the fact that there's someone in their corner and
yep,
someone that believes in them and that keeps showing up and is consistent. You know what I mean? So
heck yeah. No,
yeah,
and that's
it's
huge. I mean,
pretty
and
cool.
I think that's the role of the teacher to begin with. Anyways, I think
Yeah.
a lot of us get stuck on this subject that we teach, and those are the teachers that probably should take a break or kind of just take a seat. But and they get tired, or there's a burnout,
Yeah.
or it's not a good fit at whatever school you are. But the teachers we had, it was a big school at the time, and I always tell people, ask us like, what's that one teacher that drove you to be here? And I'm like, I honestly, I can't name one. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sharing great stories of Senorita Ward, and it was funny, and it made an impact on me, and it was great. She had good energy, but I never felt like a teacher at my high school reached out to me. And I didn't need that. Thank God I didn't need that. I had that in my house. I had coaches, I had parents, I had my things going on. But some
Yeah.
people probably did. They probably did need someone to reach out. So I hope that they were able to reach out to them. But it was a lot different back then. And big schools and overworked teachers, they're just like, next
Yeah.
class, next class, like, let's go, the bell rings. And I don't know how you felt about that, but I didn't think that any teacher ever really made that. Like, for example, I'll tell you this: there's some teachers that I had in the Thomas, um, that I see them now because they're still in the district, they're still there, I'll see them at a
Yeah.
staff thing. They don't know who I am. I have to go up to them and tell them what year, and I get it, they've had millions of
Of
students.
course. Of
But
course.
just to show you, it's like, I remember every single teacher I had, but I don't think any of the teachers remember me. I don't think any of them. I don't think any teacher remembers me because I was so quiet. So I don't know.
Yeah. It's there's some truth to that, and I think it's tough, like you said, because the size of the classrooms, the fact that there is a lot of demand on teachers, um, but I do feel like what you're trying to, what I'm hearing from you is in some of that humanizing it, and I recognize you, even if
Yeah,
they don't remember you, but I
yeah,
recognize you. Oh yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah, that sounds right. Two of my really good friends are former teachers that taught me at Natomas High School.
Wow.
And we've been friends for, you said it earlier, more than 20 years now. And we had a little bit of a hiatus, but as an adult, I really enjoy, spending time with them. And we're at this point in our lives where like a lot of the things that they've experienced, I have now experienced. So we have a lot of the same values,
Right.
right? And we're
Right.
able to interrelate a little bit better. But that relationship would not be there if they didn't stick out in my mind or my heart based on where they were in my life as a student. And I think it was that. I think they humanized it. They showed up, right? They showed up and they showed interest in things, and they called me by my nickname or whatever it was. And now we talk and text all the time. And people are kind of like, "You're what? Your friends from where?" And I'm
Right.
like, "Yeah, that was one of my social science teachers and one of my English teachers." And mind
Uh,
you, now I'm working in an industry where I'm writing all the time. Where I'm actually using some of the skills that he threw
right.
at me. So had to have has had some
Right.
influence. You know
Right.
what I mean?
I don't want
So,
to miss one. Now that you're talking about that, I don't want to. Mr. Hamasaki did PE
yep.
teacher. He does know who I am. I do see him at Togo's here and there, and he does say what's up. So he does remember me, and I'll give him a shout out because that was a long, long time ago. Man, he remembers the freshman from his PE class.
Yeah.
So I don't want to say they don't. I just wanted to say like I want to be that teacher. Maybe I didn't need that. Like I said, I didn't need that
Yeah. Yeah.
experience.
Yeah. No. No.
I
Yeah.
and I'm not trying to talk mess about anybody. I just think I look back and I go like, thank God I had two parents at my house, and they
Sure.
were, there, and they were, and they were just, trying to take me a certain path. And I'm just hoping that somebody was there for other students, but I want to be that person for the students that I do have, like
I think
if you're
that's
in
yeah.
yeah, if you're into art, I'm gonna hype you up, and if you're into
Yeah.
rap, I'm not gonna knock you down. I'm gonna say, okay, you like rap, but how, what are you doing with, and I just try to give them a little feedback. You're on SoundCloud,
Yeah.
okay, cool. Now what else can we do? Little things like that, and I guess we could take it to the next thing now, like gaming, right? They try to get me into gaming. I'm just like, dude, I haven't played video games in a long time, buddy. Like I don't have time. I always tell them I play the game of life. That's what I always tell. I play the game of life.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? I'm
Yeah.
like, my son's 4, man. That's the real game. I got to play all day. When he
Yeah.
wakes up, I got to figure out where he's at, and then I got to put him in bed at the end of the day. So that's the game I played. But kind of tell me. I know you went into gaming.
Yeah.
Talked about that record. I'm excited to hear about that because when I hit you up, I had really no idea about it until I started seeing you post. Like, oh wait, okay, I think we're hitting on the right time. So kind of tell me about this whole gaming thing.
Yeah, so I've worked in traditional sports a lot of my career.
Right.
I've worked so in public relations, basically you're storytelling. You're kind of helping produce key messages for whatever your client is, or whatever organization you're a part of. So for instance, at an agency where I've worked a lot of my career, we work with big brands and organizations that are trying to get themselves out there to the public. They're trying to tell creative stories in different ways. And a lot of that is through media, whether it's paid or earned. So like if you see something on the news, whether you're reading, Sports Illustrated, or you're looking at Hypebeast Instagram, there's probably a PR that was behind that, right?
Mm,
And so I've done that kind of work for a long time, and worked traditional sports for, I don't know, the last 10, 12 years. And I've worked at agencies. I worked at the NBA for a while. I've worked with the Chargers, as I mentioned. I've worked with, talent. So a lot of athletes over the years. And then I did play a lot of games when I was growing up. But I was more of a student of the business behind it, and watching kind of the culture behind it, especially in recent years, because there's a lot of nuance between traditional sports, so like the NBA, the NFL, whatever, and esports
okay.
and competitive gaming. There's a lot in common. There's leagues, there's teams, there's athletes, there's partners, so brand sponsors basically.
Crazy.
There's contract issues, there's other issues, there's all kinds of stuff, and it all interrelates, and is very comparative. And so I was kind of fascinated by that. And when I was at the NBA, I had done some work in gaming. I had launched some like titles with Batman and with Warner Brothers and some other things. I'd done some launches over the years. When I was at the NBA, I helped launch the NBA 2K League, the
Mm,
new competitive league based on 2K title, and that was pretty cool. And the level of excitement that came through there. So I started paying real attention to the space at that point. And then fast forward several years later, I was in LA, and I had founded my own agency where I was specializing in sports and culture. So I was working with, Ice Cube's Big Three. I was working with Under Armour. I was working with a handful of like artists, so muralists and contemporary artists, and folks that were working with brands, just like unique stuff. And my wife came over because she was exiting a partnership that she had developed, and we started building the business together. We
Right.
started building the business together, and we decided that I should probably go check out a full-time job. So I did, and one of the full-time jobs that I found was for this agency specializing in competitive gaming and esports. And I was like, this sounds kind of cool. Let me check this out.
Right.
So I got the nod in February of last year. So you're about to find the timetable is interesting. February of last year,
Mm.
and then I jumped into the role in April. And by that time, everybody was living at home, not going outside, not interact. So gaming exploded.
Yeah, big time.
So I basically had like, okay, let's fly the plane, while let's build the plane while flying it kind of
Yeah,
experience when it
let's
came to
go. Yeah,
gaming.
yeah.
And so the agency I'm at now, we do PR and communications counsel behind all of gaming culture. We work heavily in esports and competitive gaming. So we work with some of the biggest orgs out there, like Team Liquid. They've been around for 20 years. They have 100 plus athletes. They play in 17 titles. But they also do other things like apparel. So they have partnerships with Marvel and Naruto and all kinds of stuff.
Wow.
And then we partner with Evil Geniuses, is another legacy esports organization. And then we work with leagues and tournament organizers like Riot Games, who I'm sure you've heard of, and they do League
Yeah.
of Legends and they do Valorant. So we help support them. And then we do some like peripheral brands that are and organizations that are doing more in the space. So we work with a gaming chair company, or we work with a health and wellness company that's benefiting esports, players' health, like those kinds of things. And we work with them to tell the stories. And it continues to grow. Our agency is about 3 years old now, and today they named me general manager of the North American office. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Cool.
I didn't think I would ever have a GM title in my life, and here I am. But yeah, man, it's cool. It's the space is crazy. It's big business, and the fanship behind it is, just as big and involved as you would think. Like, for some of the European soccer leagues that are out there. It's that fanatical. There's people that live and die by these orgs that they follow, and the players themselves. I mean, there's talent that have millions of followers across all their social and
That's
Twitch,
crazy.
and every time they go live, it's like they get 100,000
know.
viewers, and
I
it's
know.
crazy, man.
I know, and I believe you because, and I'm not saying I'm not anti-gamer. Okay, I grew up like just like you were playing Super Nintendo, all that stuff. Sega Genesis
Yeah.
and all that. I still have a Dreamcast in a box. I still have a Sega Dreamcast. People don't even kids. The kids don't even know what that is when I tell them like, "What is a Sega
Sure.
Dreamcast?" I'm like, "Dude, are you
They're
kidding
like,
me?"
what's a cartridge though? They don't even know what that is.
Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
we were over there
Yeah.
blowing
Yeah,
on
man.
the.
Yeah.
Yeah, we thought the best game ever, was Space Jam. I mean, not Space, NBA Jam, right? It is the best, one of the best games ever. But yeah, so I'm not an anti-gamer. I'm totally a fan of it playing. I just never, I think I got away from it and never really went back into buying the stuff. But I do see the culture, man. I see how Fortnite, and I don't know if you consider it a sport, but Ninja, you were talking about, a guy, right, just playing and he's doing this thing, and I was just like, I'm just so amazed too, as far as like the culture behind it, like because now when we were growing up, our parents were like, you can't play video games all day, right? You can't, and it's like, no, you can. Like these kids can, and they will, and you can do that for a living. Remember, because that was the thing they used to tell us, you can't do that for a living. It's like,
Yeah.
but now I can't tell a student that, a 12-year-old can do that for a living. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, I mean, for Team Liquid, for instance, they signed this kid Mitro, and I think at the time he was 17 when he got brought on. So it's equivalent to someone signing
Yeah,
a Major
LeBron
League
James.
Baseball
Yeah,
player.
yeah.
Only he's going pro day one, and he's competing at the highest level,
Right.
and he's got millions of fans already, and he's got a couple championships under his belt before he becomes a legal adult. And that's only part of the scene. I mean, there's plenty of other talent that aren't competing too, right? They're doing other things. They're doing graphic design, or they're actually building the game. So they're programming and they're developing. They're branding. There's so much in the space now that I think it's with any industry. And what I'm telling some of my students and mentees is, sure, everyone wants to be the Jerry Maguire. Everyone wants to be the agent, or everyone wants to be the general manager at a team, but there's other things that or they want to be the quarterback, right? But there's other things that you can do to help with the industry
Right.
to be a part of it. And there's plenty of things that aren't being done yet that you can create and you can develop on your own because you see the need or the white space or the opportunity. And you may be smarter than I am because you've lived and breathed this space that you know what's missing or you know what's not working. So you
Right.
should be able to look at and try to figure out what you can do and bring to it. You know what I mean?
Heck yeah. And now that you said that, it reminds me, I went to ARC after high school to play soccer. And I remember I was just so into, like, I wanted to go pro, right? It was like this, every 17-year-old says that. And I remember my godfather, my father, who was the counselor at ARC. And he was like, he talked to me. He's like, "Hey man, there's so much, you could do more stuff out of soccer, but be part of the game than actually play, right?" And I'm like, "No, I want to play." He goes, "No, man, but there's the guys that make money. They're not playing, and they're part of the game. Like, you can do whatever. There's a bunch of different things." I kind of just ignored him a little bit, and that's
Yeah.
But now I'm going back into that space, and this is why, technically, why I started the podcast, because I'm a huge soccer guy, and I was like, you know what? First, I want to do a podcast that's not about soccer. I want to just get myself out there as a personal brand, and I'm talking to a PR guy right now, but I wanted to get myself out there as the guy. I'm the guy,
Yeah.
and then eventually, like, get that experience and get that practice, and find a way to get into the soccer space and the media. And I've been approached a couple of times already from different clubs in LA to kind of do their thing remotely. So we'll see. That's definitely what I want to go to and follow my passion. But like you said, you could be around the game and you don't have to be on the court. You could be doing other things. And there's so many people. Because you've been in these franchises, you've been working with these clubs, and how many people have to work for that game to even start. So there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, you don't always think about that, but there's a lot of folks behind the scenes that that bring these things to life. So yeah, for sure.
Do you have you been keeping up with anything Sacramento? As far as, like, I know you, I don't know, I know you're not a huge soccer guy, but
The
have you
Republic?
kept up with soccer and how we haven't had our team yet? Have you seen that in the news?
A little bit, yeah. It's funny. I'm really into trading cards. I mean, I've been throughout my life, but really in trading cards right now. As I'm sure you've seen, the market's
Okay, Gary
exploding.
V. Okay, Gary V.
And
Right.
I was at a show, and this guy was pretty boisterous and like excitable, and he was cool. He was a cool dude. And he told me somehow Sacramento came up, and I was like, "Oh, I know all about Sacramento." And he's like, "You what?" He's like, "I just got a job with the soccer team out there." And I was like, "What? What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm selling tickets." So then, we started to talk a
That's
little bit
tight.
about the reality there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's cool. So, once you get these, once you went into these, and what would you say the biggest difference is between the esports or the games and like, I know you said there's a lot of similarities, but what's the difference? Obviously, you call them athletes, right? They're gamers, right? But they're athletes. I guess they are, right? They're
They're
over there, they're doing their
athletes.
thing.
They are.
And they are, right? And I huge respect to that. I see them. They're on Twitch. They're doing the thing. What are some differences that you see, though? That maybe that they're different from when you were at the Chargers or you were helping out with the Clippers or whatever.
Well, I think within the space, esports is still pretty nascent. It's still pretty new. It's kind of like in its infancy. I mean, it's been around for a long time, but in terms of the actual growth and where it's at, it's just starting to explode the last several years, last decade or so, right? So it's still pretty new. With that, there's a lot of stuff that's already established in traditional sports that is starting to happen in esports. I think a big piece of that is broadcast deal, for instance. Everything is online, so they don't have like a big time these leagues don't
Cable.
have like a big time unified partner per se. A lot of them partner with Twitch because it's a way to stream, and that just makes sense. It's more native, but like they're this summer, or last summer I should say, there was some coverage on ESPN2, which I think was like a sign of the future, a sign of things to come. I think that's a big piece that's still kind of missing. The other piece that I think is still missing is there's still a lot of outside, they call them non-endemic. Endemic means like in the space, like ingrained in the space. Non-endemic means peripheral, outside. There's a lot of non-endemic brands that are just starting to warm up to the space and just starting to get into it, and they haven't quite figured it out yet. So that symmetry is not there 100%. So you see some brands doing some things and kind of just fading out in a blaze of glory because they don't understand the space. Or there's other brands that could easily step in that haven't yet because they're kind of reticent to do it because they don't quite get it yet or whatever it is. I think those are two big pieces of it. But there are a ton of similarities. There are a ton. And not only that, there's a lot more convergence between traditional sports and
Right.
esports. You've seen the traditional big time athletes competing in events. Like you've seen them compete in like Madden tournaments. That's
Yes.
esports. Or you've
Yes.
seen them streaming on Twitch. That's part of the ecosystem.
Yes.
Team Liquid actually signed Ariel Powers, who plays for the Minnesota Lynx. She's in the WNBA. She's the first WNBA player to sign on as a talent for an esports org. She's a streamer and an ambassador, and she's actually helping lead their diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts and their task force there. Like, so that's starting to happen more and more. The other part of it is you're seeing a lot of ownership. You're seeing, for instance, we work with a group that has Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan as investors. They also have Peter Guber. You've heard the name. He owns the Warrior. He's a part owner of the Warriors and the Dodgers and LAFC. And Ted Leonsis, who owns Monumental. So like the Washington teams out there. That's happening a lot more because of the symmetry between the spaces. And it's like the understanding of competition and the prep before game, the analysis after game that these athletes and these coaches all undergo. It's so close and
Yeah.
similar. So I think we're going to see more convergence as we are going to see more separation in these spaces. And why not? And also we may see more complementary items like maybe you gamify traditional sports a little bit differently, whether it's with AR. So like you're going to go to a soccer game, and all of a sudden you're playing a game while you're watching the game, or you're interacting with the game a little bit different. Like that's
Right.
all kind of a component of esports and gaming in some respect,
Right.
and I think we'll see more and more of that. So
I definitely agree. We are going to see more and more of it. We saw, like you said, the pandemic was kind of, it's not a good thing. Definitely not. It was worse. It was terrible. But that's where gaming was kind of like, it was going, right? And all you see these
yeah,
athletes, they started or these celebrities
yeah,
started their Twitches. And I didn't even know what Twitch was. Um, and then I just jumped on there one time and I was like, wow, this is pretty cool, And eventually I want to find my way there somehow to a streaming way that way. But I really liked how, these athletes are going on there and you're like, because, a lot of my buddies are into Call of Duty and I'm like, dude, I'm not. That's one thing I'm not. Like, I don't even know how to do. I'm not good, right? I suck. I'm terrible at any.
I'm not good either.
I don't like
I'm not good
losing.
either.
I don't like
Yeah,
losing, right, Mike? So
yeah,
if it's like for example, golf, right? I suck at golf, and until I learn, I'm not gonna go out there, So I'm
yeah.
not good at losing. So I'm just one of those guys. I'm not gonna compete. Even poker. I'm not playing poker, and so I'm not doing it. So I hate losing. So that's the same thing with video games. Like, man, I'm not gonna play. I suck. So it's the same thing with that. But I know a lot of students. They talk about it at school. The different video games they play, and it's so crazy. Mike, they're even gonna have. I wanted to kind of piggyback what you were talking about how it's still gonna grow, and there's still so many things going with it. The CIF just approved last year before the CIF is the sport. They approved the e-gaming, dude, for the state.
Yeah,
So like
yeah,
high schools are gonna have gaming teams, and at first I sat there like, oh, dude, this is the end of it, right? Like this is the end of the world, right? Like I cannot believe we're gonna let kids play video games. But as I kind of grew onto it, I was like, wow, we're gonna allow kids that won't make the baseball team or they won't make the football team, right? And they're gonna be allowed to compete, and compete with their school and represent
sure.
their school and be part of a team and not just that, but be part of a whole new wave of things that's not going away. And I know
Yeah,
they approved like 5 games, and the kids were the only thing they were freaking out about was like, oh, we can't play the games we want. And it's like, okay, we're definitely not gonna have Call of Duty at school, bro. Like we're not doing Call of
right,
Duty.
right, right, right,
It was like Rocket League and a bunch of it was more general games that kids could play, kids safe, we would say. Um,
Yeah,
and at first, like I said, I was totally like, oh my gosh, right? But then now that the pandemic stopped it from even happening because we went home and it didn't
sure.
happen. But so I'm hoping that this next school year we
Yeah.
get that going and the kids get jerseys, man. They get going.
I think it's awesome, man.
Yeah,
I think you learn so much from that kind of experience in terms of, discipline and camaraderie, dedication. So, how does hard work contribute to, where I want to go in life, all of those things. But like you said, I think what you said was really astute and profound in the sense that like the school spirit showing up and representing something, like there's something to that. You stand together with someone else, you stand for something. There's something to that. You got it from soccer, I got it from football and other sports too. Like so I think there's a lot of value there. There are a lot of colleges that have competitive teams and clubs as well, like clubs and actually recognize sports as well. And there's scholarships behind them and everything. It's a big deal. And then there's amateur circuits too that are outside of college. So like folks coming up. So how do you harvest that talent? Where are you finding it from? And that's a big focus in the space right now as well. Which I guess is one of the differentiators between traditional sports and esports, is that space is still growing and figuring itself out, like the farm clubs, or the talent, the scouting events and the combines and things like that. Those continue
They
to
have
pop
combines?
up. They do, yeah. They continue. They're called like scouting grounds or some. They have all kinds of different names. They're really starting to show up more and more and more, and I think that's a space that there's a lot of growth still. Wherein you have baseball, for instance, you've had the minor leagues for forever now, and you even have the college system set up. But that's a space where I think you should continue to watch too, because I think it's going to be kind of its own business and ecosystem as well, which is really exciting. Because even if you don't make it to the pro level, you were at tip top competition still, and you were learning things about yourself and the game, and potentially finding other ways to continue to participate in it. Like we were saying earlier, maybe you become a coach, or maybe you become a scout, or maybe you become part of a partner. Like for instance, there's this technology that actually analyzes your kind of like your hand-eye reaction and coordination by monitoring your eyes and the movements and the rapidity and like the way that you click and the click rate and the responsiveness. And now they're moving toward, you'd be really good at this position in this game, or you'd be really good on this team.
Wow.
Because much like traditional sports and
right. You're fast, you're over here, right? You're big,
yes,
you're over
exactly.
here. Yeah.
Which is crazy, but that's where it's headed, man.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, and it's almost like the same thing with the social media or the phones, or technology, because you hear it like, oh, I don't want my kid on there. It's like, well, they have to be on there for a little bit at least, because the world's that's not going away, and I'm a big fan of Gary Vee, and he talks about, people always complain like, well, I have this business, but I don't know how to run Facebook. And it's like, listen to me, like, you need to take time and learn Facebook, right? Or you need to take time and learn Instagram. Like, you have to do it, because that's not going away, and we saw what happened with the pandemic. The companies and the businesses that were able to adapt quickly to this digital world, they're still going, and they're still doing okay. They were able to change their menus to QR codes, right? They were able to DoorDash is blowing up. Instacart, all these big companies are just ready to go, and it wasn't like they knew the pandemic was coming, but that's just the wave of how technology is going, and you got to be with it. So I think as a parent, I see my son, and he messes around with the tablet, right? And so sometimes at home, or my parents would be like, oh, I don't, he shouldn't be on there. I'm like, well, first of all, he's playing a game, so he's learning like these little math things or whatever, little PBS games. I'm like, how's that any worse than watching like, a movie? When the movie's nothing's going on, he's just watching it, so at the same time,
at least he's engaged, and
there's some learning both ways, there's some learning both ways. And I was like, so it's like, and if you notice, like, the attention spans are different. People, I don't know about you, but I lost my attention span over this last year, man. I can't watch a movie, man. I can't watch a movie. So it's quick,
I'm just so busy that if I could squeeze in a movie, I'm like, I'm like, tuned in. I'm not gonna relinquish that time. Like, I'm like, yeah, I'm here, man.
Yeah. So how did that affect you? I know you said it was kind of a perfect storm, that you were, got a new position, and then you were at home, and obviously your position required you to, it's a digital space anyways. How did that, what did you do over this past year, man? How did you deal with that?
How did I deal with that personally?
Yeah, how did you deal with it personally and professionally?
Well, I surely learned a lot about the interrelations of a marriage. You know what I mean? We were basically on top of each other the entire time.
It was the make or break for sure for you. Yeah, but you made it.
It was, and you know what? I think it was kind of a catch-22. You definitely, if you were sitting in a good place, or there were real good roots or foundation behind your relationship, that survived, and it probably leveled up. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't there, you probably gonna find out and had to figure out a way to to kind of I mean, I think setting a schedule was really important, and making sure that I was living as if I was still in a similar routine before we were in quarantine. I think the hardest part for me was, I'm a very social person. You said you were following me on social media. By the way, we all know that social media in some respect is a facade to how easy and fun life is, because there's a lot of stuff that we put there that's like This is glamorous.
It's a
This is excellent.
success. I heard it. DJ Oasis. He went to high school with us too, but I just had him yesterday, and it's just he calls it a scoreboard, right? He calls it. I thought that
Yeah,
was the first time I ever heard that. I always say bulletin board,
that's
like
cool.
this one right here, but he says scoreboard because you only put your wins, and I like that. That was dope. So
Yeah.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, but so I'm a real social person, as is Pilar, my wife, and we're always doing something. So like I was telling you, whether it's teaching or I still work part time with the Chargers, so seasonally I do stuff with them. But I also go on a lot of trips and go to shows and try to like just be really involved in stuff. And I'm constantly traveling and X Y Z. And like I had friends who have kids and like real demanding jobs, and their lives are just very very challenging and rewarding but challenging, and they were checking in on me. Yo man, how are you doing? And I'm like, what, me? Like, how are you, like handling all of this with the kids and everything? And they're like, no, because I know how much it's impacting like your day to day and what you're used to doing. And I didn't really think about it that way, but it did make sense. And I missed some of that stuff, I certainly did. But I also adapted, and there were other ways to connect and interact and socialize. And I just tried to make best of that. I really did. And I tried to be good with my time. And when I was down, and I recognized that. And I tried to figure out, okay, this is a low. This is not fun. It's due greatly in part to what's going on here and the impact that it's having on me, myself, others. So how do I be in that moment, figure out, it's okay to be in that moment, and then potentially move forward? How do I get out of that? And I did that through, like I said, routine, taking care of myself, because I think, we also work really hard. That's why we have so much fun. That's why we do all these things. So we also work really hard, taking time outs for myself and taking, time to work out or make sure I cook a good meal or walk the dog, those kinds of things. And that helped. And I think selfishly and a little bit of survivor's guilt, this past year for my wife and I was one of our best years in like the last 10 to 15 in terms of all the things we were able to do and accomplish and be involved
Yeah,
with, candidly, which is crazy to think about, but
yeah.
yeah.
No, and I totally agree with you. I think I'm kind of in the same boat. I think I'm just a couple years younger than you, but it definitely was. It's selfish to say, but I think we had a great time, especially, like I said, I was lucky enough to have my family and we were able to
Yeah.
get through this. And man, I mean, I couldn't complain too much, right? I had a house, I had my family, we had health, and it's like, I did feel bad for the ones that didn't have that, or,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
definitely as a teacher, I'm thinking about my students and the ones that had to be in a rough situation the whole year where maybe, school was a better situation than where they live at. So, things like that was like, it was rough, man. And dealing with Zoom and like having this, there's like this Zoom
Yeah.
trauma, man, like being on Zoom and,
Yeah, no,
and
yeah.
my neck and,
And by the way, I think that there's some reality to the transition back, right? So now the door is open for the most part. Like, we're still recovering and there's still a lot of work to be done, but the door is open in many respects. Like, we're not equipped to that for that kind of rebound. We haven't really experienced that kind of thing, a lot of us anyway, in this generation. And so I am being mindful of that with myself and with others around me. Like, hey, like, remember that it's okay to not be okay, or take your time on things, like, because it's going to be, you know it's going to be impactful and affecting too, going back to things full time and going back to the way things were all of a sudden. Like, it's gonna change the mental dynamic and the emotional dynamic. So that's a place for us to really, like I said, be mindful of and supportive around as well. So
yeah. And I think, they, especially at work, they asked us, what did you, as teachers, what's working? What do we want to take from this, right? What do we want to take from this to the next step, for next year? Like, what can we learn from this pandemic? And
yeah,
I think the biggest thing I wrote in a little survey, I don't know if they're going to read it or not, but I wrote, I think at least the world will respect people who are sick. Like you said, it's okay not to be, like, for example, when you and I growing up, it was like, oh, you go to school, man, sick or not, sick or not. And
yeah, for sure.
I think I'm hoping that companies and businesses and big corporations are able to be like, oh, you're sick, it's cool, man, stay home. Here's, you got a computer, right? Log in and finish your work today. Like
Yeah, yeah.
some kind of flexibility where it's like you get 3 days a year to do that or something, something like that. I don't know.
And I hope, because I think due to the circumstances that we were in, I hope that we also pay attention to some of the other plights and difficulties that we were dealing with as a culture and a society. You know what I mean? I know you know what I mean. And I hope that this time, you know, at least started the process of us being a little more humanized and on the same page as each other. So you mentioned, you know, you're sick. I know what that's like. I know what it's like to have to be at home and not have everything I need and like be in an awkward position because I'm working in the kitchen area. Like, I hate that too, but you do what you have to do. Like, but that's only part of it. And so I agree with you. And I hope that's only part of it though. I hope that the time that we spent kind of living in the same like same space of unfortune and misfortune, hopefully it brought us together a little bit more. And I don't know, we're still dealing with a lot, but hopefully, you know.
Yeah, and definitely you said a lot of things were going on.
Yeah,
We also, I know like students were sent home, and just it was amazing to me how many students didn't have internet, man. And I was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
what? And like you hear
yeah,
it, and you're like, oh yeah, I get it. But
yeah,
until you're like there, you're like, oh crap, like wait a minute,
yeah,
you don't. And
yeah,
so then you start seeing, okay, yeah, we the school was able to provide it later on, but I talked about it with a buddy of mine. It's like, um, well, this student didn't have a computer before, and other students already had office space, and they had a gaming
yeah,
chair, and they had LED lights, and they had
right,
headset, right? They're ready to roll. They have a bunch
yeah,
of stuff.
yeah,
And other kid is like they're using the school provided computer, and it's not the same. It's not the
yeah,
same thing, and it's like wow, we're just not, and it's hard to get that to that equal point, but we are just definitely, it's very, even the neighborhood where I'm at, where we grew up, you know people are all over the place as far as
yeah, for
what they
sure, for
have and what
sure,
they don't have, and
for
that's why I
sure.
like where I live. That's why I love where I live because of that.
Yeah,
But it's definitely, you saw that this really just put the lights on that, like, hey,
yeah.
this kid has this and this kid has a lot, it's, whoa.
And you may have been exposed or mindful of that already, but there's others that definitely weren't. And hopefully that gave them a little bit more insight into, how the other side of things are, and that's what I'm saying. I hope that, like, I go back and I called it survivor's guilt because we did so well within the year,
Yes.
professionally and personally. And there's a lot of things that we started to build individually and together, my wife and I, during this time. But all the while we were paying very careful and close attention to those things, like you mentioned, the folks that were struggling, and then the things that weren't going very well for others, or folks that were sick, or they were dealing with death and dying because of this. And even like I was alluding to earlier, with the cultural dissonance and issues within the greater community, we were very much paying attention to what was going on and trying to do our best to be good citizens, and help out wherever we could. We know and we recognize there's more that can be done and that we can do more, but I think that we as people evolved a ton, and I hope that others did as well and continue to look to do that, so
Yeah, no, big time. I mean, yeah, no, I think we could do more. We could definitely, learn from this. This has to be a learning. This has to be
yeah,
one of two. It has two things. To me, it had to be a learning experience for everyone. We had to learn from it. And number two, like you definitely like you saw the memes going around. Like if I'd be like, oh, if I had time, man, I'd get in shape. If I had time, I would have started this
yeah,
business.
yeah,
Like if you
yeah.
didn't do it this time, you weren't gonna do it, man. Like you had a whole year to get this stuff done, man. You got to get started.
But I think we were also just like kind of under, some emotional duress and just trying to figure it all out too. So if anything, maybe it'll motivate you now that you're coming out of it and you're like, oh my gosh, I have more flexibility now, or
Right.
I can actually be out there. Maybe it'll inspire you to kind of dig in a little bit too. So
Yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah. No, yeah, for sure. And that's how I got into the podcast thing. I was like sitting
Yeah.
around. It was, I had my summer off, and that's why, it's not one of the reasons I'm a teacher, but it definitely it's on the list. And, I had the summer off, but we couldn't do nothing. We're in California. It's like, man, we can't do anything.
Yeah.
So, it was just every single day the same thing. And I was like, man, what if and I'm a creator, man. I kind of want to talk to you about the creative space, but I'm a creator. Like I'm not a content creator. I don't want to call myself that because everybody's doing that, and I don't like that.
Yeah.
I like to just be different. But I definitely have always drawn or I've DJ'd. I've always like done things. I've always had to be doing things, and I've always been bad at like not just joining someone. I've always wanted to do it myself, and it's
Yeah.
just something I have inside me. Like, oh, I'll just do it myself. I don't want to join that or whatever. And so, I was listening to podcasts and doing different things, and I was like, man, I think I could just start one, And I
Yeah.
literally just said, I think I should start one. I started one in my bedroom. I had my cell phone, and I got the app, and I just started talking to it. And then I was like, all right, man, I can't do that. I got to do something. I got to pick it up a
Yeah,
little
yeah,
bit.
yeah.
But I started, I got the microphone.
And
I
you got
started
some
picking.
glow up. I mean, you got a light, you got a nice mic fix. I mean, look at me. I'm all fuzzy and stuff because the lighting is off, but
But
that's
you
all
look
right.
good though. Yeah. So you still look good. But I was just like, you know what? Like, let's see where this podcast thing takes me. But I've always been that kind of person just to create, right? So to me, it was a great time to be able to do that and just kind of create stuff. I do my own
Yeah,
little design, my own graphic design. I do my own cuts, my own edits, So it's
that's
just something
awesome,
I like
man.
to do,
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. The
Um,
little animated version, Alex, that's pretty dope. I like that a lot.
oh yeah, and that's a shout out to my buddy actually. But he did that for me, a coworker of mine, because he's an art
Yeah,
teacher, and I said, hey man, could you do? And so he does it, And I'm trying to. It's like it's this network thing that I want to do with this. Like I'm getting like my
yeah,
buddy made the music for me, and I got other
yeah.
people just just trying to like let everyone kind of get it,
That's
get part of this
awesome.
team. It's a team,
Yeah, that's
It-
awesome.
It's a little e-gaming team, but kind of tell me about that. I know you said you were really good at your teachers even recognize that you're really good at writing. You're really good at
Yeah.
expressing yourself. Where did you get that confidence? First, tell me that. Where did you get that confidence to do that? Because I think that's the biggest thing. It takes people confidence to kind of speak out and be that person. Where did you get that, man?
Confidence for writing
Confidence
or
just to express yourself, because obviously when
in
you're writing, you're
general?
expressing yourself. So how did you, you know?
I don't know. I think both my parents are pretty boisterous. They're kind of out there. They love to be the life of the party.
Okay.
But
Are you
that was
only
a day.
child, Mike? Are you only child?
I have a half brother. We
Okay.
didn't
Okay.
really grow up together, but
Okay.
we now in our adulthood, we hang out all the time. He's
Okay.
a close friend of mine, even. So that was a part of it. Also, I had a split household. I would spend time at dad's and mom's. So it was kind of interesting because I was almost in real time learning two different lives. Um, and because of that, I think this actually contributed to some of the confidence. I had to figure out who I was and how to communicate that in a way that made sense for me because I had a kind of identity crisis, at any given day. I wasn't Mexican enough or I wasn't white enough. And there were things that I did well that people acknowledged me because I was white. I was able to do it. And there were things that I, wasn't doing well, or if I got in trouble, unfortunately, people would look at me as Mexican.
Mm.
And that, I think with that, I realized I had to figure out my own truth and who I was. And I wasn't one or the other. I was both, and I was me. And so that kind of led me to being a little bit more creative and having that more internal resonance and recognizing who I was. So I did things like write poetry, and I did things like write songs, and I did things like write short stories. And I think that was early, before it was for an assignment. It was just like things I like to do. I was just a kid that liked to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And when I went into college, I took a couple creative writing classes, and one of my teachers early on was like, "You're really good at this." And that's what I was sharing with you earlier. You need to look at, a career where either you're going to become a writer or you're going to write, constructively, but in a way that makes people listen to you. And that's why she asked, "Have you heard about?" And we did not have that at our school. We had communications, but we didn't have PR. It was more like, general general education on what communications were. It wasn't specialized as to go into PR. And so I kind of learned that all on the fly. But it seemed to all work out at the end of the day. And
That's cool.
even though I'm at a point where, I'm doing a lot of team development and leading and client development and relationships kind of work, I'm still doing writing every day. And I really enjoy it. Sometimes it's kind of hard because it's like, oh, that's an area I'm not a specialist in. Now I got to familiarize myself with it or make it sound cool, even though it's not. But I still enjoy it. I really do like writing a lot, and I'm still able to express myself within even my work,
That's cool.
um, and everything else too, social and
No,
everything,
yeah.
everything that we
No,
do.
and
We
it's
do
something
now
I
with our
say.
scoreboards.
Yeah, the scoreboard, the social media scoreboard. No, and I the reason I ask is as a teacher right now, I see students that are I think the biggest thing, especially Spanish, right? You're learning a new language. It's the confidence, and my whole job is literally I'm just trying to coach them up. Hey, you got this, right? What's the word? Come on, we did
Yeah,
this. So that's literally my whole job because I'm just like, hey, come on. And a lot of them are like, I'm not answering this question. I'm not gonna sound like a dummy, And so I get that, and I said I understand that. I can't relate to it. I told them I don't have that experience. I said, I
Right.
grew up speaking Spanish. I went to school, had to learn English in school, but I was so little, I don't remember not knowing what was going on, So I never had to learn a new language like that. I said, I never learned by someone writing down on paper. Obviously English I did, but
Yeah.
everyone else did that. So I said, I get it. I know where you're at. So I guess I was just asking, the confidence issue because I'm like, hey, my whole job is to get these, because I teach Spanish 1, I teach the lower levels. So I'm just like, hey, you can do this. And I told them, if you say it wrong, nothing happens, right? The rest of the kids it's okay. They're gonna say it wrong too. Everyone's gonna say stuff wrong. It's okay. And I think that's the biggest thing when you talk about. I like you touched that cultural thing. It's like, a lot of students don't want to learn the language or don't want to learn a second one, or sometimes don't want to learn English because
Yeah.
of that one little situation. Like I said, your mom dealt with that. Saying the word the wrong way. Wanted to be a T-shirt, and so instead of being a teacher, she was working hard to like fit in
Yeah.
and say what she wanted to say. And so people laughing, even one little laugh, that could end it right there. Like I'm not
Yeah.
talking no more. So that's
Yeah.
why I asked about the confidence thing. That's all.
Yeah, I think the thing is like when you're trying something new, if you're able to find some kind of sense of comfort in it, something that you're familiar with, and you can, somehow bridge the gap or, kind of level the playing field somehow, some way. That's one thing that I try to do when I teach is kind of share, you know, kind of dig into the student's interests and figure out, all right, well, what do you like to do? What is of interest to you? What brands are you buying, or what are you watching, or who are you following, and then try to turn that into an opportunity to teach around that. So have you ever thought about telling a story for Fenty or whatever it is? Like, have you ever thought about what goes into a campaign for something that Apple's doing? Like, have you done that? No. Well, I encourage you to look at that, or I encourage you to think about that, because you could easily do it. I
Mm-hmm.
can. Yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Someone has to do it. Why not you?
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to really help, because there's probably the innate interest already there, and it's just helping to discover that with that, there's a lot of empowerment. Once you know yourself, like I was sharing earlier, and you find that interest, you can do a lot with that alone. So, yeah.
No, yeah. And I don't want to take too much of your time. I just wanted a couple more questions, but I know going into like what you do as PR, right? When I think, and I kind of want you to touch that a little bit. I know you touched it as far as what you do with the gaming and what you're doing with the agency.
Yeah.
But when I see PR, this is what I think, and I want you to kind of tell me what you actually do. Because when I
Yeah.
see PR, all I ever hear is, oh, the PR person's going to respond. So I always feel like it on the defense. I always see like
Yeah.
PRs on the defense. Can you kind of go into a little bit about what the day would look like when you were working or when you do the PR stuff? I know maybe right now you're maybe on the team, like you say, the team building. You're more like on the upper group of
Oh,
it.
I'm
Like,
still I'm still getting my hands dirty every day.
okay,
Yeah, yeah,
okay. If
yeah,
you kind
yeah,
of want to
for
talk
sure.
about that, because explain a little bit what the PR career would look like.
Yeah, again, it's a lot about communicating messaging to whatever your audience is. So, for instance, if we're looking at one of the teams, the organizations, they're probably trying to communicate to fans. They're probably trying to communicate to brand partners that they want to help drive forward a piece of business. So how do you get this kind of thing going? And general public, because they also want to be attractive to new fans or prospective fans, just for instance. So we work with them to tell stories, and we do it via earned media. So we do it via some of the bigger esports media outlets. We do it through some of the bigger tech outlets. So you talk about like The Verge or Gizmodo or Engadget, or you've probably seen and read some of these in the past. We do it through social media, so helping them devise a social media strategy, and using their own tools to communicate a certain way. We do it through digital channels. So do they want to use their website, or are they creating content via video to like tell a story? Are they creating videos, and how do they thread the narrative through that? And
Mhm.
all of this should all come together to really tell a comprehensive story around something, whether it be their brand, like their ethos, who they are and what they stand for, or a campaign that they're launching. So, are they gonna partner up with a community nonprofit or something? And so how do they tell that story? Did they sign new athletes? So how do we tell that story? And it's all about communicating these key messages around these respective activities to those publics. that they're really interested in getting in front of. And so our day to day is helping consult on developing that messaging, and creating ways to tell that story, and in unique ways. And so certainly there are a lot of opportunities to be reactive, especially in crisis situations, because there's always going to be a crisis. No matter who you are, something's going to come up at one point or another, right? But there's also opportunities to be proactive with your storytelling, as I shared, and there's opportunities to be proactive with some of the crisis situations too, and get ahead of them. So anticipating what that narrative could be when something happens. I call it, I'm a curse, oh shit moment, because it happens to everyone. So how do we get ahead of that moment, and how do we set ourselves up for success? And then once the moment happens, how do we get ourselves out of that moment? So there is a lot of that, but I do think people, there's kind of long-term understanding of like spin doctors. There's that term like spinning a situation, and there's still some of that. There's still people that do that in the profession, but real good PRs will set the stage for a situation, and be prepared for pretty much anything that could come up. Yeah.
So, okay, as a podcaster, man, you ready for some free advice now? Because as a right now that I'm in the podcast space, right? I kind of feel like it's the new blog. People are writing. People used to do blogs, right? Oh, they still do blogs. People are writing these things, but it's kind of like when you're in a space right now. You're in the e-gaming space and you're in there, so you think everyone's doing it, but it's not. It's just because you're in that space. It's kind of like being like everyone's podcasting, man. It's like no, it's not. Right? It's just people that I'm always following podcasters. So I guess how do you see that wave going, man? Are you guys using this? Because I guess I don't know. I'm trying to formulate my question here, but I as a podcaster, right? I want to grow, right, Mike? So but I want to grow as a personal brand. So it's like I'm not tied to just my podcast. It's more like I want someone to call me like, hey, Alejandro, we need you. Come and do this. I don't know. Any advice you have for me as far as
I think from a podcasting perspective, and by the way, I often work with podcasters. Like I reach out to them and say, hey, have you heard about this? Let me tell you more, and would love to have someone on your podcast.
Okay. So you tie that.
So I work with the producers and the talent and podcasting, much like I do radio or TV, right? I'll pitch. I have this new in sports athlete, an esports athlete, or executive or whatever it is that wants to come on and talk about this experience or this product or this campaign or whatever it is. Like let them come on, tell you more about what they're doing, and you can ask them about all these different things. And so podcasting is a new media avenue that we've been like working with the last couple of years. And it's awesome because there's a little more flexibility. Like you can allow them to kind of open up some more. It's not usually as condensed, as in terms of like a TV segment that might be 30 seconds or a couple minutes. You could do a full episode like you and I are doing, and I didn't pitch you, by the way. You came to me and then we said it.
No, hey, I reached out, man. I just threw it. You brought it in. Like, yes, let's go.
I think one way for you to pitch the podcast, by the way, is to continue to really hone in on what your message is. What is the key offering that you're presenting to your audience that other podcasts aren't? Once you figure that out, you need to formulate a mini campaign on getting that message out further. So is it, taking clips of some of your best episodes and sound bites and pitching them to other media, folks that are covering the streaming space or the podcast space or education space, if your focus is going to be, on education throughout, and saying, hey, this is something I think you should check out. Would love to chat about it further. And then maybe they do a profile on you. Maybe they bring you into their podcast.
Right.
There's a lot of like cross promotional opportunity. I often encourage the media that I work with that are starting podcasts, and they ask me that, how do you think I should pitch this? Or how do I put PR behind this? It's like, well, one way to do it is you lean on each other's strengths. So that's why you'll often see a sports pundit, so like some kind of commentator, or an analyst or a writer or whatever on these stations, and vice versa, because they glean from each other's audiences. It's not only are they the expert, not only are they close to the Cleveland Cavaliers, but they have that following, and then they can kind of cross promote and,
so it's just like what we do. It's like when we collab, like we like
exactly.
YouTubers are collabing,
it's a collaboration.
Okay, and I've been featured on 2 different podcasts, so I guess I'm going that route. Yeah,
and you should probably think about, returning the favor as much as you
Right.
can, or if it makes sense. And then you build up the network and you kind of help, cross pollinate audiences. And then I think for yourself, generally, it's finding other avenues where you can introduce your podcast just besides, putting it on the typical channels where people can go catch it, which I'm sure you'll plug at some point, or
Of
putting it
course.
on social, but
Of
also
course.
getting out there. So like, are you going to go speak at a community event? Are you going to go speak at a podcasting event? Are you going to, do, I don't know, an instructional video that you put up and try to make yourself an expert in the space?
Mm.
There's other ways to do it. Or and by the way, these events don't have to be specific to podcasts. They can be like you said, specific to education, or maybe specific to your cultural experience. So there's an event or a series or whatever that caters to young Hispanics and their experiences and how they grow up, and how they can leverage their community to do XYZ or whatever it is. Or maybe it's a sports platform that talks about career pivots because you wanted to be a pro and now you're doing this, but you're still fulfilled and you're killing it.
Right.
Like and as you're doing that, you're introducing yourself more and more, and you're showing yourself as an expert, in a space that you're already talking about on the podcast. And then because of that, you can point back to the pod for more. Or if you want to
Right.
learn more about me or my
Yeah.
guests or other things we're
I'm
talking
all
about, check this out. You
right.
know what I mean? So
Right.
there's a lot that can be done. And I
Yeah.
charge. So next time, we want to put together a plan. We could do that together, but you're gonna have to just kidding.
Well, that's why I was like, I'll interview him and then I'll just shoot a little, free question in there and he'll just do it
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, you're like, I'll get him on the fuzzy camera. I'm sorry, man, my lighting is terrible, but and then we'll see what I can get from him in terms of promo. I got you.
I got a free consult, you know what I mean, online on the air. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, man. Well, I appreciate your time, man. I appreciate you. It's like those things, where we're not the best of friends, but it's like one of those things like we just press pause and I see you 20 years later and we'll talk. It's pretty cool that
Yeah.
I've had that feeling before with other people. I'm like, I was able to meet up with some elementary buddies a long time ago, like 2 years ago, and it just felt like, dang, dude, last time we saw each other was sixth grade, but it's like, what's up, man? We're 30,
Yeah.
and it was like, it felt like it was the same. I don't know. It just felt like we pressed pause and I'll see you later.
There's reasons why you're attracted to certain people and why you interact really well with certain people. There's energies. There's all kinds of science behind this stuff, but sometimes good people just beget good people, man. And like, you just enjoy the presence of other folks that live energy and, exude energy in a certain way. And I feel like you're one of those people. I've always felt that, you were, not to be insulting, but you were a kid when I was a kid, but like, I looked at you as a kid because you were younger, and I was like, this kid, there's something with this kid. Like he's got some shine to him. You know what I mean? And so I'm really glad and proud to hear about all you've been able to do, and that you've really taken advantage of living a good life, man. And that's cool. That's really cool.
Oh, sure. Well, those are very, very kind words of you, man. I appreciate you, and let the people know where they can find you, man, before we close this up, and I'll let them know where they can find me, of course.
Yeah, they can find me on Twitter at M as in mother, Chavez Booth. That's my last name, M Chavez Booth. You can check out more about the agency I'm at, thestorymob.com, and the Story Mob pretty much on all socials. I'm also on Instagram at MCB, but I'm sure you'll tag me so they can.
Of course,
I'm
gonna tag everything. Don't worry. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, man.
I'm gonna tag everything, and I appreciate. Like I said, I hope we can reconnect in some way and stay in touch. Like we have. This is the power of social media. Like,
yeah.
Okay, he's there, and I'm gonna get different people on here, and I appreciate you just giving me that time and a space and being able to just talk old school stuff, man, because it's always cool to do that too.
Yeah. The next one we'll do it in person.
And that's okay. Before we close it up, this is my goal. I do want to get to that point where I could do these things in person and set up some kind of mini studio space where I could do some better cool content. But yeah, hopefully we can do it in person and meet.
I'll bring a guest with me, like an athlete or an artist or something, and then we can help continue to build that empire that you got cooking, man.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate your time, Mike, and
of course
we'll be connecting again, man. So stay safe and enjoy the rest of your day, man.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.